Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates post-game live after the Warriors officially secure the seventh seed in the NBA's Western Conference. I feel like I've just had about 10 years of my life taken away from me with some health concerns after that game. This was probably the first game all season where I've been proper nervous, and I feel like my heart rate, like my heart was just beating through my chest almost the entire game, particularly down the stretch there in that fourth quarter. I think I just went into this thinking, okay, if the Warriors lose this game, their season's pretty much done. Even if they were to secure the eighth seed, the difference between coming up against the second seed Rockets as the seventh seed and the number one seed Thunder as the eighth seed is quite dramatic. And I think going into this game, I thought, yeah, if we lose this, the season is basically done and dusted. But fortunately, that is not the case. The Warriors hold on in a game that had basically everything. Looked very good early in the first half. Well, aside from the 11-2 opening by Memphis, where you thought, oh, okay, this is not a great start. But then the Warriors took control, went on a massive run kind of midway through that first quarter up until like the final minute of the first quarter, went up by 13, right? There was a 22-point turnaround in the space of basically 7 or 8 minutes. Grizzlies, I think, finished the opening period on a 7-0 run, got it back to 6 after the first. Warriors then go up as much as 20. They have that corner 4-point play from Steph that basically puts them up 20, like midway through the second. You think, okay, we're rolling. And then from there, things got very, very anxious. Memphis come fighting back. They got within, 12 at half, and then they, really dominated the third, got back to within 3, and then took the lead in the fourth quarter. And you're like, oh, God, if we lose from here after being up 20, that's going to be a complete disaster. Fortunately, Steph came through, but I think the big storyline from this game was undoubtedly Jimmy freaking Butler. Man, like, this is what the Warriors envisaged, right? When you make this trade in early February for Jimmy Butler, this is exactly how it is supposed to play out. You get to a big, pretty much do or die situation, and you get a legit superstar caliber player to pair with Steph Curry. Let's be honest, no one else for the Warriors really played well in this game. It was Steph and Jimmy combining for 75 points. GP2 and QP, I think, in the first half were excellent. But aside from that, Draymond did some things defensively, but also fouled out in the final minute. And it was really just the two-headed monster of Steph and Jimmy that just got the Warriors over the line, and particularly Steph there in the fourth. Couple of huge threes in the final 2 minutes that were so crucial, because some of the officiating, and I'm sure you guys have already mentioned in the comments, some of the officiating in the final minute was as bewildering officiating as I've ever seen in an NBA game. Like, I do not know what they were on, what was happening. Now, granted, I think the Warriors probably were fortunate earlier in the game with some calls, earlier in the fourth quarter, like that one where Scottie Pippen was called for a foul when he just legitimately didn't touch Jimmy whatsoever. And even Jimmy kind of looked over to the bench and was like, oh, got away with that one. They called a foul on a layup that I just blew. I don't know what was going on down the stretch in that final minute. Like, Zach Edey got 2 free throws on a loony foul out of completely nothing. I just thought Moses called a timeout and that was it. Not sure how Edey got 2 free throws down the stretch. Pods, you could see, Jimmy turns the ball over, horrible play, in the final 40 seconds. Scottie Pippen's driving to the rim. You can see Pods. He's like tracking him the whole way, thinking, I'm going to block this. And he did. It was a great defensive play. And the ref called a foul for a reason I'm not particularly sure, right? I don't know, some of the stuff. And then, Memphis have a chance to tie. They're down 3 with 5.4 seconds left. Don't even get the ball in, and the refs call a 5-second violation. Man, the heart rate was pumping in that final minute. It got way too close for comfort. I think the first thing in that final minute, once Steph hit that second 3, you go up 6 with a minute to play. You think, okay, surely we can't lose from here. Surely we can't lose. I think the biggest thing was the Draymond foul. What are you doing? Why is it worth trying to gamble heavily on a steal in that situation when you're up 6 with a minute to go when you're playing with 5 fouls? He takes a huge gamble to get the ball before Desmond Bane off the inbounds, doesn't, bumps into Bane, not only fouls out in that situation, but sends Bane to the free throw line for 2 just cheap free throws when half a second came off the clock. Why? Just play good defense. Like, that was a horrible decision by Draymond and nearly caused a sequence of mind-boggling events that could have easily seen that game go to overtime or a potential Grizzlies win, right? Like if Scottie Pippen hadn't missed the second free throw on the one that Pods clean blocked him and the ref called a foul, then who knows where that game is at, right? But fortunately, Steph, 13 of 13 from the free throw line, 37 points. I think he had 8 rebounds, 4 assists. Jimmy went for 38, was huge in the first half with 21 points. He did absolutely everything in this game except for make his free throws, and that nearly cost the Warriors down the stretch. Very uncharacteristic from Jimmy Butler going 12 of 18 from the free throw line, which for some players is, 12 of 18 is not that bad, 66% or whatever, 66, 67%. But for Jimmy, like prior to the Clippers game, he was 61 of 63 from the line over his previous 8 games. He then missed some against the Clippers, which proved crucial. And then again, just missing some of these free throws. Like, man, what is going on? He should have had over 40 points in this game, and the game probably shouldn't have been as close as what it was. But fortunately, the Warriors hold on. They'll now face the Houston Rockets in the first round. Oh, it's going to be a massive, massive battle. We've seen some of the huge matchups that these two teams have had over really even going back to last season where like there was this kind of rivalry stemming from, who's going to make the 10th seed in the West. And it was kind of overplayed because it was like, hang on, we're just fighting for the 10th seed here. It's not much is going on. But now we have a legit playoff matchup, 2v7, and the Warriors, I think, are going to give themselves a fair shot because you can look at it and say, you know what? Golden State might have the 2 best players in this series. And if you've got the 2 best players in this series, you're a legit shot. And so my first initial thoughts, now you get 4 days off, first games on 4 or 5 days off, first games on Sunday at Toyota Center. My first thoughts are I would be disappointed if the Warriors didn't win this series. They are my initial thoughts. Now, I'm not saying they're going to run through Houston and win easily. By any means, this is a very, very good team. No doubt about that. We saw what they did to the Warriors at Chase Center only a couple of weeks ago, just completely negated Steph and Jimmy, kept the Warriors. Look at, okay, who's the best player on the floor? Steph Curry, to me, is the best player on the floor. Jimmy Butler is probably likely to be the second best player on the floor. Houston probably have more depth, but we will wait and see what happens here. It's going to be huge. But I'll get to your comments here, guys. I'm sure plenty to go through. Logan says, Guy Santos showing his value. Guy should be getting all of Buddy's minutes. Really interesting rotation from Steve in this one. It was shortened to 7, you could almost say. Obviously, the starters, then GP2 and Quinton Post. I thought Post was really, really good in this game. Did he lead the Warriors in plus minus in this game? Let me double check. Quinton Post was a plus 12 along with Draymond, right? Looney, interestingly enough, was a minus 11 in 10 minutes. But Post played 22 minutes. Peyton played 20. You had the starters play big minutes. And then Buddy played 12, no impact whatsoever. Looney played 10, and Santos played 6. And he was actually, pretty impactful, had that massive and one in the second quarter. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Again, no Jonathan Kaminga, obviously. Does that change at all against the Rockets team that is young and athletic? And we've seen Kaminga have some success against the Rockets in the past. Maybe, but it's still unlikely, in my opinion. Logan says, Pippen holding Steph the whole game. The amount of times I saw Pippen hold and grab Steph was crazy. He finally fouled out in the final 10 seconds or whatever, Scottie Pippen. Look, if you're him, you're just trying to get away with as much as possible, right? And obviously, the further this goes, the more important these matchups become. The bigger the officiating is going to be analyzed, and the more important that the officiating is going to be, and that some of those calls down the stretch were just goddamn awful. JSO says this is the worst reffing in NBA history. They were making things up. They were legit making things up, right? And that's the thing to me. Like, why did Edie get 2 free throws? Like, the block by Pods. I mean, what are we doing? You can go back earlier than that. The one where the Warriors challenged the Draymond fifth foul where it looked like Edey went over the back and they didn't overturn that. And Draymond was just shocked. Draymond was legitimately shocked that they did not overturn that. And not only did it cause Draymond's fifth foul, but it allowed Edey to stay in the game. And part of me, like the conspiracy theorist in me, just thought, okay, they just don't want to foul someone out in a situation like this with 6 minutes still to go. They just don't want to foul a key player out. And Edey was a key player. He played, how many minutes in this game? 32 and a half minutes, right? Had 14 points, 17 rebounds. Key player for the Grizzlies in this game. And it just felt to me, the conspiracy theorist, because when they challenged it, I was like, okay, that's going to be overturned. Edey's going to be thrown out. Fantastic. And then when they didn't, again, conspiracy theorist in me just thought, nah, like they just don't want to throw out a guy with his sixth foul in a situation like that with such many minutes still left on the clock. So I don't know. Knox says, what are these calls, man? Logan says, that call on Looney. Game should be over or already, that call on Looney, with a bunch of laughing emojis. Then Nick says, that call on Moody, we are in the playoffs. Jimmy is here. Can't believe we choked a 20-point lead. Lol. It's only a choke if you go on to lose, in my opinion. Choked a 20-point lead, I suppose you could argue. The Grizzlies came all the way back, took the lead, but fortunately Steph took over in the final minutes, and we eventually got the job done. Logan says, Steve Kerr still doing small ball BS. Good to see Guy Santos fighting for rebounds over and over. Very valuable. Steph hitting those 2 clutch threes. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the rotation, because you can certainly argue that Guy should be taking like all of Buddy Hield's minutes. I kind of mentioned that after the Clippers game the other day. The GP2 stuff's really interesting because he was excellent in the first half. And I don't have... People think that, after my comments on Sunday, after the Clippers game, people were saying that I'm like a GP2 hater and stuff like that. No, I really like GP2. I think what he's done over the second half of the season since the All-Star and since the All-Star break has been excellent. He's been in really good form. He's been hitting his threes at a higher level. So I don't have an issue with GP2. I'm just going by what I see in a game-by-game basis. And to me, he could not stop James Harden whatsoever. And I think throwing more size at Harden with a Moses Moody in overtime may have made a difference. And also Moses is going to take a 3 if he's wide open, right? GP2 might also, I think he took six or 5 threes in this game. 2 of 6. GP2 took 6 3-point attempts in this game, which 2 of 6, it's not great, but it's not horrific either. He probably, if he didn't make a couple of those early ones, he probably wouldn't have put up 6. So I don't know. Like, I'm not a GP2 hater. I like GP2. I hope he comes back in the offseason, probably on a minimum contract, given where the Warriors might be from an attack standpoint. But I'm certainly not a GP2 hater, and I was fine with him playing 20 minutes. I thought he played reasonably well in this game, particularly in the first half. He was a big game changer off the bench. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens moving forward, because I think things have just got to be on a game-by-game basis, right? And I had no issue. I was actually kind of surprised they brought Pods back in for GP2 down the stretch. I wouldn't have complained if GP2 stayed in the game for Pods, if I'm being honest. Like, Pods really didn't provide a whole lot. Would have provided plenty had that block not been called a foul in the final minute. But he goes 3 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, just 1 of 7, 1 of 5. So not a great game for him. Really, again, no one really played well aside from Steph and Jimmy. Post, I think, played well. GP2, I think, played well. They were the 4 guys. Everyone else, Draymond was okay. But again, like, he has 4 points on 1 of 5, 6 rebounds, 10 assists, 3 steals, a block, did some things defensively that I thought were nice. But aside from that, not a great Draymond Green game necessarily. Moses, I thought, again, had some defensive plays that were really solid. That one to end the first half on Morant was excellent, where he got a block there. 9 points, 3 rebounds. Again, only 1 of 4 from deep. His 3-point shooting really needs to come around here. So, I don't know. There's plenty to take from it, but really the only 2 major positives were Steph and Jimmy, and that's ultimately why the Warriors are now officially a playoff team in 2025. Double Marsh says, Warriors win. What were those crazy calls at the end? Man, they were tough. Don't know what was going on. Fenix says it was smart to let Butler control the game at the end. It was until he had that awful turnover in the final 40 seconds where Pippen got the ball, ran in transition. Again, clean block by Pods, but apparently not according to the ref. Do you think JK should play against the Rockets? I think I don't think it'll start like that. I think he'll start out of the rotation still, but maybe there comes a time throughout a long series that it's like, hey, we need to try and match some athleticism here, some size at the forward positions, and maybe that's where he gets called upon. I'd certainly you've got to try and just keep him engaged. You've got to, and that's going to be the test here. You got to try and tell him, all right, you can see the opponents we're coming up against. You've had success against them in the past. We're probably going to need you at a point here to try and match the athleticism and the size. You got to be ready. You got to be ready, because that's my biggest problem now is if I'm him, why, I'm at the end of my 4th year. I'm about to hit restricted free agency. Why am I really caring? Honestly, why am I caring? Right? This team has proven they don't need me. They've now proven that they don't want me because Steve's not giving me a single second of playing time over the last 2 games. Why should he really care? And I know, it's easy to say, oh, well, he's part of the team still. He should be a good teammate, blah, 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 blah. It's pretty hard for Jimmy Butler to go to JK and say, oh, you got to do the right things, when Jimmy Butler just forced his way out of Miami. Now, for a completely different reason, sure, but he was pretty disenchanted with the Heat, basically, because the Heat said to him, we're not giving you a max contract extension, right? The Warriors now saying, Jonathan Kaminga, we're not even giving you a single second of playing time. And so to me, how do you keep him engaged, not only as a good teammate and not impacting the locker room negatively, but more importantly, perhaps saying to him, we're probably still going to need you here against the Rockets, right? How can you keep him in a mindset where he can actually come out on the floor potentially and have a positive impact? I don't know if you can. I honestly do not know if you can. And that's nothing against JK as a person. That's just human nature, I think. If I was him, I would be looking at it as this team has proven they don't need me and now proven they don't want me. Okay? Why should I care? Honestly, that is how, and I would have no issue with Jonathan Kaminga if that's how he felt about this situation. It's going to be tough. Then it says Warriors held Grizzlies to 7 points in 8-minute stretch, then gave 7 points in the final minute. Double and March says JK seems like a better fit against the Rockets. I agree with he's a better fit against the Rockets. Now, whether that means he gets minutes or not, we'll wait and see. Then next says Steph scored our last 10 points. Was it 15 of the last 19 or something like that? He was huge again. Fortunately, this one actually paid off because he was big in the 4th quarter against the Clippers as well, and we know how that one ended in far more disappointing fashion. Robbie says those refs might actually be blind. That foul on Looney for the rebound was terrible. This is the thing. They make stuff up. I think it's worse. I'm always on the side of, if you're a ref, be conservative and don't call things, right? I think it's much worse when they call things that are just blatantly not there. They're just making things up out of nowhere. I'd rather actually you miss an obvious call than make up an obvious non-call. Make up a BS decision, a BS foul, or whatever it is. I don't know. I think I prefer the egregious, obvious non-calls over just some of those ones down the stretch where they're just making up fouls out of nowhere. They're dead set making fouls out of nowhere. And I don't know. Again, I'm not going to compare myself to the NBA, but I get it playing Social League on Tuesday night. Anyone that's played any level of sport, the officiating gets really, really frustrating. And I'll put my hand up and say, I had to hold myself back on, and it's not something I'm proud to say, but last night I drove to the basket, got hammered on the wrist. Didn't even put a shot up because I just got hammered on the wrist. I was like, I'm going on the free throw line. And because I didn't put a shot up, the ref, who was a young female, who I think she was probably 12, 13 years old, legitimately, called a travel. And I was I had to try and hold myself back and I was like, if it was an older male referee, then I would have gone well in. And I was kind of there, just shocked that fortunately one of the older referees came in and said, no, that is a foul call. So I did go to the free throw line, knocked 2 down, actually shot decently from the free throw line last night. But I actually went up to the female referee, the young girl, afterwards and apologized. I said, "I'm sorry for my reaction. Obviously, it just is what it is, and it's very hard not to get frustrated in certain situations when you're playing." And even watching this game down the stretch, I was just like watching the TV in utter awe of what I was watching with some of those officiating decisions. Thai basketball fan says, if this is the whistle Steph will get, maybe they'll survive. They got to give him something, some of the off ball calls, some of the no landing space calls. If he gets a little, he can fight through. It's going to be a huge thing because we know what we saw from the Rockets a couple of weeks ago, and not even a couple of weeks ago, like 10 days ago, whatever it was. We know what they're going to do. And I think this series is going to be a lot about the officiating, I think. And I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see. It could be a lottery. Like, you could get some good calls one game, and then I thought the refereeing on Sunday against Clippers was excellent, if I'm being honest. Like, that was one of the better refereed games I've seen recently. Yeah. Well, it's just something you can't predict. It's just, it is what it is at the end of the day. Robbie says it's crazy to look back at December and January. We thought the Warriors might barely make the play, and they were the 11th seed, right? Basically, on the night of the Jimmy Butler trade, they were 25 and 26, really, really struggling. And we're back here now, and we're a playoff team. And I think even if the Warriors don't go far, I think the fact we get to these games, I get to a situation where I'm so nervous and anxious about a game, that's a good thing. And I think the fact that we get to a situation where we give Steph a chance, and I think that's all that Steph wants. It's like, I don't need the team to be, an utter dominant championship contending team the dynasty years or something like that. I'm not asking for a recapture of the dynasty years. I'm just asking for a chance, right? Give me something. And he's got Jimmy Butler now, right? And Jimmy was just huge in this game, and just him and Steph, that combination, it gives the Warriors a chance against anyone. And I think if Steph sniffs a chance, sometimes that's all he needs. Entire basketball fan says Draymond's fourth foul was dumb as well. Can't gamble like that when he has 3 fouls. Yep. Thanik says Buddy only scored that open layup. Give JK his minutes. They're different players, though. Buddy's spacing the floor for you. Yeah, it's tough. Mr. MRA Space says vintage late game Dre, no IQ. That was so dumb. Thai basketball fan says thought it was bad when Jimmy missed 3 free throws last game. This can be a real issue if he doesn't figure it out. I'm not concerned one bit. I mean, he shot, was he 6 of 9 the other day? So he's shooting free throws badly and he's still at 67%. Let's not make out like he's shooting under 50%. We're concerned and he's shooting 67%. I'm not concerned by any means. I mean, in the previous 8 games before these last 2, he was 61 of 63. Right. In fact, if anything, I'd say it's a good thing, right? That the Warriors have got through, secured the 7th seed, even though Jimmy's missed some free throws over the last 2 games. Tells me that he's probably going to round back in, and that percentage is going to go up, right, in the playoffs. So, yeah, I'm not concerned one bit about Jimmy Butler's free throw shooting. I'm more so just happy about how much he's getting to the free throw line. That's the biggest thing for me. He takes another 18 in this game, should have had over 40 points. That's the biggest thing. Again, not overly concerned. I would be concerned if if it cost the Warriors this game as well, right? And then you look back at it and think, man, the Warriors are either going to be the 8th seed or eliminated entirely because of some Jimmy Butler missed free throws. Right. I know you can look at certain, a lot of different factors, and it's unfair to say they would have missed the spot based on his free throws. But yeah, now that they're the 7th seed, I'm not concerned about his free throws whatsoever. Logan says, I'll continue to say Pippen held Steph so many times that game should have fouled out a long, long time ago. Fair enough. Yep. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm also I'm not going to get hung up on that, based on, the fact the Warriors won at the end of the day. So that's really all that matters. And, I think some of those ones down the stretch there were just much more egregious, I suppose. Thai basketball fans, there's another big thing about that lost challenge. They lost their ability to challenge all the crazy stuff that transpired later. Yep, for sure. I don't know. Do we need to change the system a little bit with challenges where refs can look at plays on their own in the final 2 minutes? I think I would do that. I would say, all right, I also just think you should get a challenge until, and they're not going to do this because like there's going to be games where refs are just that bad that teams are going to be challenging every call and getting it right. But I've always been of the opinion of, okay, if you challenge and you get it right and you obviously keep it the first time, but if you do it again, you get to keep it, and you just continue to you continue keeping your challenges until you get one wrong, right? That's my opinion, but I know like they're just not going to put the refs under that kind of pressure, and they don't want to get to a point where all of a sudden a team's had 10 straight correct challenge calls and the refs look horrific, right? That's the NBA doesn't want to set the refs up for failure with a situation like that. So I get that. Maybe bring it in where last 2 minutes of a game, refs can put their own hand up and say, I'm not sure about that. Let's challenge it. Now, again, can you put the onus more on the refs to make that decision? Would there be a case where they feel pressured into certain decisions by home crowds or by certain players? I don't know. But we just shouldn't have a system where you have multiple wrong calls in the final minute of a close game like that, and none of them can be reviewed, right? You can't go back to the video whatsoever. Like, that's a problem. That is a problem. That's going to cost a championship, right, at some point. Robbie says, I'm a big JK fan, but if I was him, I would want to leave. He has so much potential in certain systems. Yeah, I suppose the Warriors still have the cards somewhat in the fact that he's a restricted free agent. But otherwise, like, I'm not sure how you can look at this current situation and think that either party has much interest in a reunion in the offseason, in coming back together on a new contract. Kaminga certainly wouldn't. He'd be like, no way I'm staying here. Now, technically, he can go out and get whatever offer sheet he wants, and the Warriors can still say, man, you're staying here because you're a restricted free agent. We're matching. So the Warriors still have that in their back pocket. But I'm not sure how the Warriors can look at, say he gets a $20 million offer sheet from the Nets, $20 million per year. I'm not sure how the Warriors can look at that and say, yep, he's been out of our rotation in the playoffs, but we're willing to pay that. Like, I don't know. Thai basketball fan says, you're definitely not a hater. That word is thrown around too much. Lol. Will says, Guy Santos needs more minutes. It's hard to disagree. I thought he was very impactful in the 6 minutes he played. And you know what I liked from Steve today, just to give Steve some credit, because I know he's been copying so much recently. I like the fact he backed in Quinton Post for 22 minutes, because that was my biggest concern. Is like, all right, we're just going to see loony all day, and no Quinton Post minutes, right? That was my big concern. And so I'm glad that tilted back in Post's favor, because I just think for the Warriors to be a real legitimate threat, I just think there's so much more upside in Post than there is in Looney. And so I think just from that perspective, you need to play this guy. And I'm glad he did. And I'm glad that QP, repaid the faith and basically said, hey, I'm a rookie, but I'm also 25 years old. I've also got, and we've seen it, he's got the mentality of he's not backing down 21. He's not going to put away his 3-point shot, right? He's not going to look at Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler and say, I'm passing up this open three to get them a look, right? If he's open, he's going to fire it up. Thought he was really good, particularly in the first half. Will says, yeah, Kerr still doing the small ball stuff and letting our guys get overpowered. Part of that is him. Part of that is just like the roster flaw. And I don't know, if Post can continue to get some reasonable minutes, maybe that helps. But obviously we know he's not necessarily much of a factor defensively or on the glass necessarily at this point of his career. Danger Zone says, yeah, if JK was conducive to winning, he'd be playing. Yeah, like, it's fair. I'm not, like, based on what we've seen, right? And I said this after the Clippers game, like, based on what we've been seeing in recent weeks, it's not an horrific decision that JK is out of the rotation. I'm not saying it's an egregious. I'm not here stamping my feet saying Jonathan Kaminga has to be in the rotation, right? So I'm not even like having a crack at Steve for that. I'm just having a crack at Steve and the organization as a whole for letting it get to this situation where he's at the end of his 4th year and now he's out of the rotation. It's a real big, as I put it the other day, it's a really bad mismanagement in an asset that you use a 7th overall pick on, right? It's really a big mistake that they've made. I'm not saying this mistake of him being out of the rotation right now is a mistake, but just in general, the entire situation is horrific. It just is. Jackson says the role players not shooting well at home is slightly worrying. Yeah, the Moses thing I think is probably more of a concern because he's been trending this way for a while, but maybe that means that, the trend is about to go back up on the eve of, as the playoffs start. So hopefully that might be the case. Berserk Monk says those refs were horrible. There was like 3 horrendous calls in a row against the Warriors. They really tried to gift this game to the Grizzlies. Johnny says Curry and Butler 75 points, rest of the team 46, a bit concerning. To a degree, yeah. I mean, other guys have got to step up, no doubt about that. Moses has got to hit his shots, same as Pods. Those two in particular, given they play so many minutes, that's going to be crucial. But it is also like the playoffs where there's so many possessions to me where like some of the role players in the regular season would like catch the ball and then go make a play or shoot the ball immediately. Like there's so many plays like that where now, because it's do or die high stakes basketball, it's like I'm getting off the ball straight away. I'm catching the ball and then I'm looking for where Steph and Jimmy are. And that's what it is. And you just get the ball in your best player's hands more, right? I think that's just what the playoffs are, right? Every possession means everything now. And therefore, I'm not giving the ball to Brandon Bajemski and let him drive to the rim and pump fake and then pump fake again and try and get a layup up or go to a step back mid-range jump shot or a step back 3. I'm not allowing that. I'm getting the ball to Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry, and that doesn't mean other guys aren't going to get shots. But most of it is going to be catch and shoot or in transition. It's not going to be other guys, going off the dribble, making plays for themselves. Okay, because you are going to get the ball in your hands of your best 2 players, and therefore they are going to create absolutely everything for you. I mean, how many points did the Warriors have in this game that basically weren't scored or assisted by Jimmy or Steph? Because they combined for 75 and they combined for 10 assists, and we know that Steph gets so many assists. Well, assists that aren't called assists, but they're basically assists from him just by his movement. So it is what it is to a degree, but yes, the other guys are going to have to play well. Fenix says Pods hasn't been playing well. We need to lock in. He's had a couple of games here that have been disappointing, but I'm not overly concerned yet. It's not that long ago that he had those huge back-to-back games against the Lakers and the Nuggets. Robbie says it was crazy how Reggie Miller, a Hall of Fame, was straight up saying the refs were wrong. I feel like commentators, play callers, whatever else, they don't want to hang stuff on the refs too much because they're kind of in a roundabout way, they're employed by the NBA, I guess. I don't think they want to mouth referees, essentially. But yeah, those ones were that egregious that Reggie had no other choice. Like they're just wrong decisions. Logan says we need the third option, Pods. Yeah, I'm not sure about I think it's more the catch and shoot stuff, which is going to be super important. Tire Basketball Fan says, I'm not concerned about Jimmy's free throw shooting in the big picture, but it can be a swing factor in a crucial game that's a little concerning. How would we look at his free throws this game if they lost? I agree with that. Absolutely. Berserk says, QP was fine tonight against another rookie center, but against other skillful centers that can easily get fouls off of him, he's not going to be playable for very long in game. Well, just looking at this Rockets matchup, I suppose like Steven Adams is their backup, so it's going to be Şengün and Adams. You could probably play him out there with Adams and try and draw Adams away from the basket. I suppose, can he keep Adams off the offensive glass? That'd be the biggest thing. If there's minutes where those guys are kind of battling it out at center, Adams, we know, one of the best rebounding bigs in the NBA, can Quentin keep him off the glass. And obviously, Edey was huge in this game on the boards. He had 17 rebounds. 7 of those came offensively. We saw Post commit a foul and an offensive rebound in the fourth quarter there at one point. So that's going to be the big question mark. Okay. Can it's almost more so the rebounding that needs to hold up in that matchup than anything else. And obviously his offense has got to be beneficial to make up for what the Warriors might be giving up defensively. Logan says, Moody and Pods, we need to shoot. Yeah, like if they're open, they got to shoot it. If they're open, they got to shoot it. But there's also they're not taking guys off the dribble at all. right? They get the ball. It's Steph and Jimmy. We're not going to see pods running 15 pick and rolls as the ball handler, right? It's catch and shoot stuff. This is what the playoffs are. Defenses are going to collapse and put all their attention on Steph and Jimmy, and you got to hit open shots. And that's why, like, Quinton Post should technically be a bigger factor here in the playoffs. Like, that's how I see it. Like, Quinton Post, to me, is the Warriors' second best three-point shooter. I don't care what the numbers say. I don't care Buddy Hield is, basically the best three-point shooter in terms of makes in the NBA across the last 6 years. I don't care. Open three, who would I rather, Quinton Post or Buddy Hield? I'm legit taking Quinton Post. So to me, he should be a bigger factor here come the playoffs, where the spacing is probably going to be more important for Steph and Jimmy, right? So if anything, I think his minutes should go up. But it's gonna be fascinating to see how the Warriors balance that with what they give up defensively and stuff like that. That's it, guys, for the moment. If you've got any other comments, Thai basketball fan says the Warriors have identical records at home and on the road. Good for a team that won't have home court advantage at any point, but not good if they don't get enough boost when they do play at home. You don't reckon the 8th seed in the East is making it through the NBA Finals and the Warriors meeting them and getting home court advantage? Who's that going to be? It's going to be, I don't know, Atlanta or the winner of Miami-Chicago tomorrow. I'm actually looking forward to the next couple of days. I get to watch play-in tournament basketball now, knowing that, and I like it, except for when your team's playing. The play-in tournament's great, except for when your team's playing. So the fact the Warriors are through now, can enjoy the Chicago Heat game tomorrow, Dallas and Sacramento, who the winner of that game might give themselves a shout in Memphis, because we obviously saw the Jar injury. We'll see how he pulls up from that one. So, yeah, that one of those two teams, they might fancy themselves, depending on who wins tomorrow. I'm assuming Sacramento might win. Who knows? Those two teams are both pretty average, but they can do something on their day. So it's going to be interesting. Mr. MRA Space said they scrambled for 50-50 balls this time, out-rebounded by 11. Yes, 50-39, the Grizzlies on the boards, including 16 offensively. In fairness, the Warriors had 13 offensive rebounds as well. So, yeah, I mean, pretty tight game. One that shouldn't have been that tight after the Warriors were up 20 early, but it is what it is. They get the win. That's the main result at the end of the day. Thai basketball fan says, are you concerned with Steph's short range shot making, missed some floaters and short jumpers, then deferred to a GP2-3 instead of taking an open floater? No, not overly. I mean, you have a point for sure. He was 9 of 22 for the game and 6 of 13 from 3. So that tells you he was 3 of 9 from inside the arc, which is not good, right? That's not good. And you have a point. Not sure how much we saw him kind of grimacing with that thumb injury again, but it doesn't really seem to be affecting his 3-point shooting at all. So I'm not overly concerned on that. You get 4 days now to rest it up, and hopefully, him and Jimmy and Draymond, particularly as those 3 veteran guys can use that time wisely and rest up and hopefully come back 100% for the first game on Sunday. Thai basketball fans says, I like Reggie calling out like he says. It's always cringe when they pretend they didn't see what happened. Yep. Yeah, I don't know. The officiating I'm glad that it wasn't a determining factor in this game, because it legit had a chance to be a determining factor. And fortunately, it wasn't. Logan says the amount of effort Gee plays with and rebounding is so crucial. Yeah, it's going to be, I'm going to do another podcast episode, obviously, between now and game 1, basically, looking at the rotation and different lineups and matchups and whatever else. So I'll certainly do that. But in the meantime, I'll probably finish it up there. We're 40 minutes in. Thank you very much to those of you that have tuned in and commented. Thank you to those of you that are tuning in on the replay or listening via your podcast feed. The Warriors, the 7th seed in the Western Conference, will face the Rockets in the first round of the playoffs. It's something I didn't think I'd say a couple of months ago when this team was really treading water and looked like they were going to be struggling to make the play-in tournament, let alone actually secure a playoff seed. So again, the fact they've now given Steph an opportunity, a chance, that's something in itself. I know it's a long way from, winning 4 NBA championships, and we maybe from that shouldn't necessarily be too pleased with just making the playoffs. But I think it's still something to be celebrated based on where this team was at only a couple of months ago. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POK252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. I'll be back with another podcast episode in the next couple of days. Thanks again, guys.